Okay, so I am at a point right now where I think it's a good time to start talking about how to manipulate it to be more like what you want it to be. So once you have done some color blocking and you're pretty okay with your colors, and I mean, you can still make some changes later. Um, you might want to start kind of breaking things up and moving things around. You may even want to redraw areas. So, what I'm going to do really fast is I'm going to make sure this is saved first. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually break this tree away from the rest of the background because whenever I click on this tree, it brings everything with it. So I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. I know that I want to cut it right down here, probably all the way down to where the sign is. So I'm going to go down to that, and then you'll see there's a tool underneath this brush tool that's called the eraser tool. And so what I'm going to do with the eraser tool, I'm going to click on that, and I am going to erase, trying to keep with the pattern of the bark, everything that connects the shape to this other object here. And I'm going to do the same over here. Now, you are going to be losing all of the information that it is connected to. But now, I'm going to zoom out. If I click on this, I now have this tree. And I'm going to make sure I've got everything selected on this tree, all these little shapes. And I'm going to Control X to cut it, and Control Shift. Oh, I'm going to delete something really fast. Whenever you cut something, you always get a bunch of like random shapes that pop up out of nowhere from your image trace. So I like to click on the first one, go all the way to the last one that still says path on it, hold down Shift, click on the last one, and see that it's just like a bunch of random shapes. So I'm just going to delete all of those by hitting the delete button on my keyboard, or backspace works. And now I'm going to do Shift Control V, and that will paste my tree in place with all the little parts. It is a compound shape still. And at this point, I can do some other things too. So I'm going to zoom out. If I click on this, oops, I click on this, I can actually make this larger. I can even stretch it if I want. I can make this, a massive part of my composition. I still have a lot that I want to do, and I actually don't want to cover up my clouds. But I can kind of think about this a little bit more as its own object rather than being attached to this other object here. Now, the reason I had you copy and paste from the original is because if I ever want to go back to the original and pick up the original tree, or even the original everything around that tree, then I still can. But right now, just showing you how to cut it free. Now, the other thing that you might have seen on mine is these clouds. Now, if I look at the original, I'm going to bring the original back up and hide mine. I hated these clouds. They look like a map of, some foreign country in my sky. So what I did was I redrew those. You don't have to be compelled to stick to the original. Feel free to jump in and add some, more of you into it, really. The photograph is of something you took, but now you can really make it more personalized and do some cool stuff with it. So don't be afraid to go in and change things. I really like this tree, and I don't think I'm going to change much about this tree, but I do know that I want to redraw this. I want to probably break up the water from my bridge here, and I'm probably going to redraw my trees too. I don't really like the trees. And then I might keep the grass though. I kind of like the grass. I think it'll work well with the texture in these trees. But I am going to break them up even more. So the other cool thing about this now being its own shape is now I can color it to be different from the rest. So before I only had this large plot of land, and my only choice was really to go painfully go like object by object and change the colors to have individual things. But now, because I've broken this piece off, I now have full control over it, what it looks like on its own. So hopefully that helps you moving forward. Remember, you can do patterns and you can fill patterns within your shapes, but I am going to warn you that if you put a pattern in, you might lose what's behind it, or you might be able to see what's behind it unless you put a background in your pattern as well. So if I maybe copy, paste in place, I can then take my pattern and put it on top, and now it's got the pattern, it's got the tree still. This pattern doesn't look very good with this background or with my idea, but I can put in a bunch of lines. I can make it super cool. It'll be broken up by the lines here. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. So, in addition to patterns, you can also do text. So, back a little bit. Um, so, if I wanted to make this into text, there might be a little bit of an issue because this is a compound shape. So if I didn't have a compound shape here, I could make fonts or text on here. I'm going to do a copy really fast and then a paste in place, and I'm going to do a release. So when I do my release here, you will notice that I now have a billion little paths here. And I don't know if that's ideal. If you're going to be putting text, doing like a few things. If you're going to go in and put text on something, I suggest redrawing it. So this background here, I've got this really cool thing here. I'm going to copy this. Oops. Copy the copy this. I'm going to paste in place. And now I can go in and I can fill it with the area type tool. Oh, did I click on the wrong thing? Oh, I've got to click on the path. And now it's filled with font, right? And I can make it whatever font I want. I can also, when you're putting it on a background, you probably want to make it, actually, I'm going to do the screen. You probably want to make it really tiny. So I'm going to make it real small. I can also make whatever text I want So I can like rewrite the same thing over again and make it like really interesting. But see, now it's all filled in right here. There's also something you can do where you can select this and it'll fill it up a little bit where it uh, justifies all the lines so that they're filling the space. And I don't know, I really like how text looks. If I were you, though, I would make the text say something. Mine has just the fill-in font, the fill-in text, and you can change the font too. You do wingdings or something kind of weird like that. So don't be afraid to play around with what you learned from the other assignments, adding patterns, adding text, um, pasting things in place, cutting out things, redrawing with your pen tool. You can also use your pencil tool in the Wacom tablet to redraw things and kind of have more of an organic look to it. Um, and since you have that original in there, you can always go back to it if you mess something up and pull something out of that. Right now, what you'll see is I have two layers. I have my color layer and I have my original layer. There, I think if I wasn't doing this really quickly and I was doing this on my own, I would probably put my patterns on a separate layer from my background. However, you do have to be careful of that because if my patterns are all on a separate layer and I want them to be behind this like background here, then I may have trouble kind of keeping it stay in place. So I wouldn't make too many layers. I may break up the sky into its own layer, have the middle ground as its own layer, and then the foreground and the sign as its own layer. Pardon the bell. So hopefully this helps you as you're working and you understand what to do with this assignment. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something.